And we're live. So, hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place where we put the fun in dysfunction. So, without further ado, we're going to talk about this panel. Why, Doc, you acting like you've never heard me say that before? What's so funny?
No, I just think it's very apropos for today.
Especially since we actually have all three of us today. Nick, he got released from the Coast Guard, and they let him come and do his thing. He stopped playing with boats today. So welcome. All right, and so I'm going to give you a sneak peek of the topic today. So we are here. If you're listening to this and you know what day it is, Valentine's Day, we're here to talk about everything we hate. No, romance.
No, this was your idea. This is called
I thought it was appropriate.
JR is the romantic one. I said we could do a panel talking about our worst Valentine's Days, but you said no, that might be traumatic.
I mean, we don't want to scar people.
If they've listened to our show, they are already scarred.
Also possibly true. So I thought, we'd dive into the topic since they do write sci-fi and fantasy romance. But before we do that, we are going to let our guests introduce themselves. So we're going to start with Miss Tyra Burton. Can you tell us who you are and what you write?
Hey, I am Tyra, and I write science fiction romance, regular romance, fantasy, and nonfiction. I write about social media, and I'm a professor at Kennesaw State, and completely discombobulated this morning, so I should be awesome.
Sounds like the recipe for epically awesome. I will take it. All right. Yes. Next, we have the lovely Miss Gail Z. Martin. Can you tell us who you are and what you write so you can introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. As I'm Gail Z. Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic fantasy, urban fantasy, steampunk, and more. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. On the Gail side of things, not all of the series have romance. Those that do have, say, 98% action adventure and maybe 2% romance because you can't fight monsters all the time. And on the Morgan side, it's much more 50-50 between the urban fantasy magical monster elements and the true love and sexy times.
Okay, and every time you say true love, I'm picturing that scene from Princess Bride where the guy with the funny hat. Yeah, I can never talk like him, but it's delicious. All right, and next we have, last but not least, the lovely Miss Erica Shaniak returning to the show. Can you tell us who you are and what you write in case anyone didn't listen to your last interview?
Oh, thanks. I'm Erica Shaniak. I write under EA Shaniak. I write paranormal romance, westerns, regencies, alien sci-fi harems. I write whatever I like. And I just love romance. It's fun. It's quirky. It can be hilarious and all the things. I don't do erotica because I'm not that exciting in real life either. So...
All right, so she loves love, and you've never corrected me. I've said your name wrong all these years, and you've never once said anything.
Wow. That's because she's a nice person.
Doc's not nice. She corrects me all the time.
It's pronounced Shaniak. It's Russian or something. I don't know. My maiden name was Coffee. That was so much easier.
I didn't know that I would have changed the name if my last name was Coffee. I'd have kept it forever.
That's because of your intimate love affair with coffee.
Yeah.
I was nicknamed Folgers in high school, and I used to get pissed. I'm like, I'm not Folgers, I'm Euban. And they're like, what? I'm like, you guys don't know your coffee then, so.
Yes, but I mean, I don't know. I would have made your husband change his name just because that last name. But anyway, we're not here to talk about
convincing somebody to do that. Guys don't respond well to that.
If they have a cool last name, they do.
Hell yeah.
Well, if you type in Shaniak,
if I was dating a woman whose last name is Skywalker, I'm changing my name.
If you type in Shaniak on Google, I'm one of 9 only in the world. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Does make you easier to find if they can spell it right. But all right.
There's that.
I try to look for the positive in life. They say that's good for you. But so we are here to talk about romance. It is Valentine's Day. We'll throw the little graphic up for a second so you can see. It's a lovely fireplace for our fireside chat with some wine. Doc, we know, has already started drinking the wine. So it's all good. Ignore the fact that we're recording this at 10 in the morning. She doesn't care.
You know what? Mimosas are a wonderful thing.
Amen.
I hear Bloody Marys are breakfast food. So I don't know. But anyway, it's got fruit and stuff. But so first, let's define what exactly is romance, and we will let the panelists go in any particular order. So what do you think makes a story a romance novel? Okay, well we'll point
Any
out
of the
then.
writers can handle this one.
Well,
Gail,
the official genre definition is that to be a romance, it has to have a happily ever after ending or a happily for now ending. So the characters have to get together either permanently or at least together by the end of the book. If it doesn't have a happy ending with the characters together, it can be action adventure with significant romantic elements. It can be romantic suspense. It can be other adjacent genres, but a true romance comes with a guarantee that you are not going to be brokenhearted at the end of the book. True love will conquer all. Your characters will be together. That's the guarantee that comes with a true romance novel.
So can that deadline, being done by the end of the book, expand for particularly because there's like slow burn where it takes multiple books?
Mhm.
Does that still count as romance, or is it like sci-fi with romance?
My understanding is that they still have to end up in a good place by the end of each book. They might not be married, they might not be engaged, but they are not hating each other and estranged and not together.
Yeah, the relationship
like with
doesn't
the
end
slow
on a
burn,
cliffhanger.
Right. That's what I
So-
mean. That's the warm fuzzy you get from reading romance, is that you don't have to be on tenterhooks on, are they going to end up okay? Is this going to be a happy book? This is a genre for people who want to know going in that it's all going to be okay by the end of the book.
So do you agree on that definition, Tyra or Erica?
Yeah, I do. And same with like slow burns and stuff. Even like with book one, how they're, they probably hate each other and, they're coming, but, at the end of book one, they're kind of getting on those, amicable terms. So there's that. And you can prolong it through the series just as long as when your series is done, as Gail said, you have that warm, fuzzy, happily ever after, and, it makes the reader happy. Otherwise, you're in that subgenre of dark romance or, whatever have you. And, you have to disclose that.
It's the classic definition. I mean, in some form or way, the relationship has to be even kill at the best. I mean, if it's a long, slow burn, but.
So do you think then that would mean if you need happily ever after from the romance side to be true romance, that there's some genres then that are not able to be as properly intermixed, say like a horror or, psychological thriller, because those seem to be the romantic angle and the horror angle seem to be at loggerheads. So can you then have a romance horror? Or
you can have a horror with romantic elements. It doesn't have to be categorized as a romance. It can be a horror with significant romantic elements. It just isn't a romance.
Candyman's a good example of that.
There was romance in that one?
There was, if you had actually watched the JR.
Okay. It's been a while,
Not the remake. Don't watch the remake, even though it was good, but it had nothing to do with romance. But the first one had a lot of romance elements to it.
Okay.
I mean, you can look at like romantic suspense, which obviously has lots of thrills and lots of action, but at the end, they always end up together. One of them's not over their grave with them dead, which might be more horror-like.
Especially if they come out of the grave.
Just, kind of kill him, but don't really kill him.
Well, that falls in the hurt comfort subgenre where, you get lots of angst over sitting at the hospital bed and confessing your true feelings, but then they have to live and everybody's together at the end. They can't
that's
just
a thing?
be in a coma.
Or like the fantasy romance, you just kind of stab a little bit, but it's not too much. Like
for some people, that's foreplay. We're okay.
Right, Nick likes it like that.
All right. So, are there any?
But just a tip.
We'll leave that alone. This is a family-friendly show, but
of the knife, JR.
I mean, this is not a gore podcast, so I'm just saying
it
it's
could be
family-friendly. Could be.
I don't
But,
know. No, JR said it's not a gore contest. That's why we're not allowed to talk about my romance life. Because we all know that.
Okay. So
It's
are
horrific.
there any tropes that match especially well with romance that are pretty universal in the field?
Well, I think you get some major ones like hurt, comfort, and enemies to lovers, friends to lovers, second chance at love, secret baby,
Wow.
Mail order bride.
mail order bride, or some variation of that. Yeah, there are a whole bunch of tropes, and sometimes you can get 3 or 4 of them in the same book. I mean, that's the fun part. We all have our favorites that we like to come back to.
Well, what's your
favorites?
favorite?
Me,
Jinx,
hurt,
you owe me a
comfort.
Coke.
Oh yeah, hurt, comfort. I want all the suffering, and then it all ends up okay, and everybody's together, and has in the meantime confessed their true love. Yeah, I love that.
I like the kind of combatant where they're kind of against each other and then come together. Or I like to write books with mystery subplots. So there's always that whole detective working together kind of thing. So
Like Moonlighting. You guys remember that show?
yeah,
Boom!
I grew up on Moonlighting and Heart to Heart. So
Yeah.
I was done.
Remington Steele.
Yes.
Steel.
Oh my God.
Don't
Yeah.
talk about my level of romance that I can handle on a day-to-day basis. Or a
So
routine basis.
what about
Erica,
you,
what
Eric?
about yours?
I like hurt, comfort, and enemies to lovers because you can just throw in all the snarky comments, all the sarcasm, and if it's werewolf, like you can use a crap ton of dog puns. Like, if I give you chocolate, will you die?
So what you're saying is sarcasm is your love language.
Oh, heck yeah. I'm very crass. What the
So have you actually written werewolf romance then? I guess like Twilight. I should know it was a thing, but
Oh,
You
shifter
hush your mouth.
romance.
Do
is
not
a
Shifter
mention
romance
Twilight
is
ever.
huge.
Oh
Shifter
yeah, I
romance-
just got. Oh, go ahead.
No, it's just agreeing that shifter romance is huge. Werewolves and
Mhm.
all kinds of different shifter
Dragons.
creatures. I've got series with I've got goat shifters. I've got a possum shifter who falls in love with the raccoon shifter, and yeah, it doesn't have to just be wolves and big cats.
Yeah.
So
I would like to be a Boston
Possum?
Terrier if I had that power.
So possums and raccoons. What would the babies be? I'm
Human.
just trying to picture that human.
At first,
And JR,
In
I write
therapy.
male romance, so that's not really an issue.
Okay, fair. Although I did see Junior with Arnold Schwarzenegger, so you never know. Science could happen. That's an old reference. Erica's like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's because she's the youngest one here.
Oh.
Anyway,
But
ageist.
do you think but you said, touching on, like, there's all these different definitions of love and what love looks like. Do you think that, I think that it's important to kind of try and show all the different possibilities, not necessarily in one thing, because that's just one novel, because that can be a little too much and throw off a reader. But do you think it's important to do that? And how do you do that? Like, you write male. How do you write male as you are obviously a female? I know, I've known you for several years. I can say this with certainty.
Visit a
Well-
Marine barracks.
First off,
Says the army man.
First off, I do caution against making assumptions about any author's gender or orientation, and say that authors shouldn't be required to out themselves to write any kind of book. This comes up a lot in the LGBTQ romance. So I kind of need to throw that out there. I never read male-female romance because I could never identify with the women in those books. They were not me. I was not waiting to be carried off on a white horse by a knight. I was out there fighting the dragon myself. And I looked at these women and went, who are they? I'm not them. But when I discovered male-male romance, these characters start with equivalent privilege from the beginning, just by virtue of being guys. Now, there can be other kinds of privilege, the billionaire and the barista or whatever. There are a lot of different types of privilege. But just by virtue of both being guys, you don't have to go through the, they start from an equivalent place in the relationship. And the other thing that's cool about writing male-male romance is you don't have to prove that one partner is still a good, good, respectable person because they really like sex. They're both men. Of course they love sex. Where in a lot of male-female romance, there's still this little dance going around. Well, she hasn't had that many partners. She's not really that experienced. She's still respectable, even though she, really likes to get it on. That's out the window with male-male romance. Of course, they both enjoy getting together because they're both guys. That's just a given. And I know things are changing and have changed a lot in the male-female romance side of things. But that was when I had my first exposure to it. And when I found male-male romance, I just said, I can identify with both of these characters. This is terrific. I love this. Give me more. And then I was having so much fun. I said, I got to get in on this and start writing it. That's the short answer. I have written much longer explanations of why I write male-male romance, but that's the short answer.
So you brought up an interesting question. So I'm going to pass this one to both Tyra and Erica. But so Gail mentioned she didn't grow up reading romance because she couldn't relate. So did either of you grow up reading romance?
No, I did not. I was busy working for my dad in the construction and trying to basically survive my toxic parents. So like I didn't get anything. I didn't start actually reading romance until I started working in the nursing home and like going to school for like to further my career. And then I would, I was always told, you knock on the lady's door before you enter, and like, okay, at night, because I worked the night shift. But like, because I always wonder, like, why would you do that? They're asleep. You just have to go in there and change like their bedpan or drain their cath or like whatever. That was like for a completely different reason. So I saw they were reading romances and they're, having fun by themselves. And then I'm like, okay, what's so great about this? And I started reading it. I'm like, holy crap, this is great. Like, I see why they're reading that. Oh, no.
Okay. So what about...
Yeah. I grew up reading Tolkien, Christie, and small town romance, which none of those fit together. But I like characters. And so back in the day, they would have these like 13 book series in the same town where you got to know everybody and they would all have their own little individual romances. And I liked that, which is probably why I also like cozy mysteries. So, but yeah, take Tolkien, Christie, and like romance and you kind of have me.
JR asked me if I grew up reading romance and I went, I know romance is a genre, but no. As I said, I have the emotional maturity of a male most of the time when it comes to romance, particularly. But
I read romance because I thought it would help me understand women. Newsflash, it does not. I don't recommend that.
That's like watching pornography, learning how to do other things.
It's been interesting though, because like Anne McCaffrey, who is an amazing grand dame of science fiction and fantasy, mostly science fiction is what she wrote. But she started, her first 3 novels were romance. And do you think that it's because there's such a classical structure and tradition around romance of like, you have the predictable ending, things like that. Do you think that maybe that's why so many people have touched into the romance genre?
I think it's easier for females, especially during her time, to get a contract writing that.
Yeah.
Whereas now I think that you can be a female and write any genre and you don't have to like have a name that isn't feminine. But particularly back in her day, that would have been probably the easiest way to get published.
Okay, that makes
Sadly.
sense. I know they still say that if you're writing romance today, you need a female pen name. I know
there's a whole set of books about Sturgises from the 1960s that was written by a guy under a woman's name.
Yeah, I know. So do you feel that romance has evolved in the genre and the books that we're reading, writing, and finding since it really got started? Because I mean, it's now not just like grandma's thing, I mean, I personally would find it hilarious to watch my grandmother reading anything with a shifter, but
it's not just for grandparents or grandma and bored housewives anymore, right?
Well,
I don't know.
My kids are all.
I mean, I see guys reading them too, which is was not surprising.
My kids are in their 20s, and I know my daughters who have always been big romance and sci-fi fantasy readers and across the board, they pretty much say they can often tell the generation of the romance author by their tropes and how they and the kinds of relationships. Now, that doesn't hold. I know a lot of people who are different ages and write different kinds of things. But I think the stuff that was published 20, 30, 40 years ago envisioned much different kinds, a much different ideal for relationships than we generally have now in most cases. And again, that's another reason why I got attracted to the male romance.
Yeah. There wasn't a lot of diversity in female ages or body types, or, everybody was in their 20s and skinny. And now at least you've got a wide range of ages and body types and ethnicity, and it's definitely improved a lot.
Absolutely.
So you've talked about a little bit that the way we describe the female body in the romance has changed. Do you think it's changed on how they describe the male, or is the Fabio trope still king?
That's one of the things that I also love about male romance is there's a huge amount of body diversity. You have dad bods, and you have soft tummies, and you have bears, and you have otters, and I don't mean shifters. I mean body types.
Google's gonna hate me today.
Don't.
Just blame the stepson.
And you've also got a lot of stories written about people with not only non-neurotypical, but also non-typical bodies. So there may be an amputation. There may be a congenital difference in a limb or something. You've got people who don't have perfect Fabio bodies, and they find love, and they find the perfect person who loves them just the way they are. And I've seen that much more in male romance than I have in other genres.
I think that's true, because I think in male, female, it's very much the same. Erica?
Yeah, it's the same.
I talked over you, so I was trying to pass the potato.
Oh no!
She responded like you were in class, like, Erica. Sorry. Oh, I wasn't paying attention. Yes, we know.
It's that professor voice.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna go over here now.
I'm having too much fun at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
Oh, that's horrible.
But yeah, I agree. There's much more different body types, besides the whole she's super cute and petite, or she's really tall and lithe, and it's really nice. You can do whatever. I love it.
So you're seeing more from the writer side, the push towards the body diversity. Do you think the audience is adjusting to that? Is it something the authors are pushing down, or the audience is pushing up in this case?
Depends on the genre.
I think
because from a paranormal standpoint, from what I've read and I've seen, you have your really masculine male sexy wolf shifters, and the females typically like an airhead and very ditzy, oh, I didn't know I could do that, that's so amazing. And it's like, are you freaking serious? But I
think I dated her 3 years ago.
Oh yeah, I didn't know I was in danger. Oh my god, thank you ever so much for saving my life.
You call those
so I see that a lot, and it just you see that, and then you also see the typical shifter guy. But I try to make mine different because I don't follow conformity.
I think one thing, honestly, is I've seen a trend away from the broken toy or idiot dits. They're the two naive / idiot dits in the broken toy, which is good. I like that. But one of the things also, and I was reading a series called Mystic Bayou, which is really good. But one of the things she talks about in it is sometimes one of the characters didn't realize they were in danger. They did not understand that culturally. So there's this culture aspect to it, which I think is great to bring in because readers aren't stupid. And but I do think what you're saying, JR, is I think there's a synergy to it. I think there's going to always be those readers who want to push for more diversity or just more difference than they're seeing. And then there's going to be those people and the authors who want to write that because maybe they already are that. Maybe they have family and friends who are, or maybe they're just bored writing the typical. And then there's going to be those who cling to tradition like fungi. I don't know. That sounded very uncomplimentary. I did not mean to be insulting.
It's definitely readers in the male side saying that they want to see themselves in books in terms of body diversity. It's also so it's definitely not getting pushed down on readers. There is a groundswell on that. And of course, with male romance and LGBTQ romance, you are also writing, there are stories about non-binary people and trans folks and all kinds of
pronouns on those always start confusing me though.
That whole rainbow spectrum and that deals with a lot of different body types and body diversity. So it's I think it's really baked in on the male and LGBTQ romance.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's having been in a lot of environments where I am the only female or the only one with, like, I work in a chemistry lab and I'm dyslexic. And so people will make jokes sometimes about inverting numbers and I'm like, yeah, ha, 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 ha. No. And I'm not really laughing. Like, they don't get it because it's kind of quiet. And I think sometimes when you're pushing for something that is different, you're not always the one willing to stand up in a room of people going, yeah, and going, no. And that can be hard. So particularly because romance is one of those genres, people don't necessarily like wave the romance flag of that's what they're reading.
So
Yeah,
Tyra, you look like you were going to say something.
Well, just on that, there is a stigma, like about writing romance and even reading romance in some areas. So like being in academia, I had no idea I won this award and they were doing this introduction of me and they talked about the fact that I was a romance writer and you could hear the ripple across the room. And I was like, great. Now I gotta start
and
talking
you left
about that.
All the way to the bank.
Yeah. I like,
they wrote academic tropes nobody read.
Well, when they announce you like that, what do you think the student's perception of you? Do they think you're like just writing porn, or do they think it's an easy genre to write? Or
yeah, that's more the problem that because my romance is steamy, but not hardcore by any means, because I write under my own name. And so I do have that. I'm like, there's this kind of moment when you're like, oh my God, they've read my stuff. Cause I just tell them who I am. They know who I am. I don't try to hide it or write under a different name because that's just who I am. So yeah, I have that moment of, oh, you read that. I'm going to go over here now. It'll be fine.
And you don't want to be called Professor Freaky, so that's why you don't get too hardcore.
No,
I'm sure.
No, that would be
Professor
bad.
King. They all sound like bad Batman villains.
But I
already don't fit in very well in a business faculty because I usually have pink hair, so it's all good.
I started out writing epic fantasy, and there was stigma because it was fantasy. It's a genre. Yep. And unless you're writing lit fic, which is really about miserable midlife muggles having these angsty crises, who wants to read about that?
No, that's my life. I don't need to read about
regular people having awful lives. Why? I want some magic and dragons and ghosts and stuff. And I think
if I have to read about people having awful lives, I'm going to at least read a biography.
Yeah, seriously. But Nick, I think the other thing is we as a culture are so uncomfortable about talking about sex. There's a huge difference between talking about sex and porn. Just because it is explicit doesn't make it porn. And
exactly.
I agree think there are a lot of people who, and some of the, current kerfluffles in the news about, oh my gosh, that book, an impressionable child might read it because it has sex in it. It doesn't make it porn. And we need to get over ourselves on that as a culture. Oh, yeah. But that's the book's fault.
That's what my European friends tell me all the time. It's like, no wonder you guys are just so uptight. You got a country that was founded by Puritans,
Well,
come over to Europe.
The funny thing.
Where certain things are as common as a handshake. And I'm like, oh, really? Tell me more about this because I need to visit Europe more.
But so that's the thing about cultures is like in the overseas, it's much more common to find very sex positive, shall we say, things even on.
Wait, you say that, but I grew up overseas.
I'm talking about Europe.
Does not fit that. So let's be very precise before we start saying that, because I think we like to all paint overseas as this wonderful, magical place. And I'm not saying that is not beautiful and they do not have their own beauty and benefits.
I would like
But-
the record to show at 29 minutes and 48 seconds, JR got his first chastising by Cisca today.
So in Europe, it's not uncommon to see intimate love between people on a television screen, but they would look askew at us for all the violence. And so we sort of invert what's acceptable here versus what's acceptable there, which leads me to my next question. Do you think, since we're talking about romance, and let me throw the little romance fireplace up for you, we can set the ambiance. Do you think that romance is different when you're writing about different cultures? Because now you've got fantasy romance, you've got paranormal romance, sometimes you've got, sci-fi romance, where you're writing different cultures that may or may not be tied back to Earth. Do you think that the romance is going to look differently? Is love going to look differently when you change those basic elements? All right, we'll go with Erica first, because she's squinting.
No, I think, love is love no matter how it comes. So, as long as you're writing, you're happily ever after, and you can use some tropes in there, whether it's in sci-fi, whether it's, contemporary, whether it's, behind a bush, love is love, just changing the setting doesn't really affect anything unless you don't really know what you're writing about. Like if you're talking about stars and space, you don't have a freaking clue, then you're going to look like an idiot. But, love is love. So just write it.
But
What?
See, if you're talking about foreign cultures, if you're talking about alien species, does love look the same though?
Well, do you create like a system of societal rules in which love would look a certain way, or do you use that as like a commentary about how love is viewed in our society? Oh my God, I went really deep. I got to lay off the whiskey. But like the challenge I would think would be creating a set of rules within the society as far as functionality and decorum and whatnot.
Okay, well, I just write what I write. I write romance. I write love is love, and I have an alien sci-fi reverse harem that's going to be releasing later this year. Is up in space. They're aliens. They're sparkly. I'm playing on the Twilight trope because why the hell not? But they all have big schlongs, so they're like, oh, you're in my area. You're in my space, little spaceship thingy. We're gonna fuck. We're gonna have. Oh, can I say that?
Oh, well, you did now.
Fuck it.
Well, I wasn't sure if I'm allowed to swear on here or not. So we're gonna oh, sorry, sis. I got my kid in here.
Oops.
Whoops.
I have a feeling that's not the first time the kid has heard that.
Nope. She tries to read over my shoulder as I'm writing it, and I try to curb her eyes as much as possible.
That's why I advocate children shouldn't read.
She's 11. I told her she could start reading romance when she's 16, and we have the talk, and you understand body parts.
There you go. Rules.
But yeah, there's for my kid. But
you're loud.
But in the book, I can't even do it now.
So the reason I asked that is what sort of inspired that question is when I was overseas, like if you look in the US, which is where all of us are from, you see people holding hands, you automatically assume it's an intimate thing for the most part. The assumption is there. Doc, I know not everybody, I'm just saying the general assumption. When I was in the Middle East, I don't hold hands.
Unless I want to drag you someplace, I'm not holding anything.
But you have no emotional intelligence. We've established this. But then you see over the Middle East, you saw men holding hands as a sign of friendship that had absolutely no romantic undertones. And so the expression of intimacy, of romance, looks different across the cultures, even on Earth. So how you express that when you're talking, when you add in species and shifters and fairies and all the things. I'm talking about the Fae, not anything else, people.
Well, so I have read stories written by people who are from other cultures or who come from a family background that is rooted in other cultures, and they incorporate a lot of those issues around how love is expressed and what's okay and what isn't, especially if you've got the tension of first generation, second generation, the acculturation to the parents came from somewhere else. the generation falling in love is more Americanized, and there can be tension there. And I've read that done beautifully from people who are rooted in those cultures. My shifters are in upstate New York. They are regular people, except when they're wolves or possums. And so it's really American culture. It's just, sometimes you go off and hunt in the full moon, like you do. But yeah, I think that there are some people writing really wonderful, diverse, culturally diverse romances, and they tackle those issues. And I think if you're going to use someone who has a background like that, you either need to know it, you need to know it intimately well so that you don't embarrass yourself and offend people. You do it right if you're going to do it, or don't do it at all.
Yeah. Research
like
is
that.
definitely, you've got to research. I think that's the great thing about science fiction fantasy, though, is that you're creating that world. So you might have inspiration from cultures that exist within our world, but you can always turn them on in and change them. So in some ways, it's liberating in that way. And I think we were talking before about the difference in touch. Like I have some female friends that are from Asia, and they'll hold my hand, and I'm perfectly fine with that. But I could see how somebody could misinterpret that. And then that brings up a whole wonderful thing that you can start writing about.
So we're going to pause for a bit and shamelessly shill for some chocolate with an advertisement because it's February. Chocolate is needed. And then when we come back, I'm going to ask a question that Gail brought up that may not be exactly tender ears. So it's not bad, but it's romantic.
I sent my kid away, so we're good.
Okay. So,
Hey there, this is author Katie Cross. I'm coming at you with an offer for a best-selling fantasy audiobook titled Flame, and it's totally for free. Here's a little bit more about it. Dragon servants Sana and Isadora Spence live deep in Leadham Wood, where persnickety dragons and wars on the borders are the least of their worries. Thanks to years of simmering tension, the hidden village is destined to crack, and soon. Sana's deep love for the giant beast causes her to make an irreversible mistake, while Isadora's disinterest in the dragons leads her to a fateful decision that will change the course of the entire world. Can the sisters prevent everything they know from falling apart? Or do they allow it to break and pave the way for new growth? Join the beloved sister witches in Flame, the first book in the Dragon Master trilogy. Just go to www.katiecrossbooks.com/flame-audiobook to get your free copy today.
All right, thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude. Doc didn't let me do my spiel about shamelessly shilling for the man because she said we should shill for the woman. But we're back. We're talking.
No, this time we shilled for chocolate.
All right, we shilled for chocolate this time. But Doc, you had a question, so let's do this.
What do you define as porn, particularly when writing? Like, I think visual media is wise. It's very easy to look at a movie or a piece of art and go, no, that is definitely pornographic. But how is it that you deal with it as writers?
Well,
There is so much gray.
Yeah.
You'll know it when you see it.
Pretty easy scale, which is if the story is all about two people falling in love, that's romance. Sex is optional. If it's all about maneuvering the two people into situations in which they will have sex, and that is the bulk of the book, that's erotica. Love is optional. And in porn, the plot is over if, by the time the plumber arrives or the pizza's delivered.
Yeah. So, yeah, I did want to caveat it because somebody maybe have a kid or may just want to pause it. I don't know.
Nope. My kid
Nick,
just
do you have an
left
opinion?
the car.
What?
Yeah, I heard her say, "I love you." Bye.
She just threw her out, and it's fine.
But the
No,
real question is,
I'm actually at my son's basketball game, and my
Oh.
daughter's like, "Can I have money to go to the concession stand?" I'm like, "Here, please go. $10. Go have fun."
so the real question that we all want to know is, does the pizza arrive hot though? Okay.
Always.
Do they care?
It's cold by the time they eat it.
And probably messy.
I wasn't going to go there, but okay. And
So-
glad we gave that warning to the audience too.
Yeah, but I mean, I've heard somebody once, I think it was Laura K. Hamilton once defined it as, is there an emotional connection? So,
Sit in the backseat.
and it was a good question to ask.
No, it is. Because I mean, in some ways, you could do some really great porn where there was an emotional connection, but then is it porn? I guess would be the question.
So yeah, I mean, there's definitely
Well,
a
lust is an
scale of
emotion.
Yeah, I mean, there's
what
been some
is an
really
emotion,
hot.
I've been told.
I mean, when you think about some movies out there's been some really hot, sexy love scenes that border on it, but there's that emotion and character connection and story build up and all those things. So
Yeah, and there's been some interesting ones. The most interesting one was The Watchmen. Watching that one, there's a sex scene in there, and it's a first date with somebody I never met, and I was not familiar with the Watchmen franchise.
So I'm going to point out that this is
Very awkward date.
This is another point of difference between male-female sex and male-male sex. And of course, you know, if we're talking porn, you can find whatever flavor, subgenre, kink you want. So, you know,
And we don't kink
want
shame
it,
here
you
at the
can find
Blasters
it,
and
it's
Blades
out there.
podcast.
What's the rule about if something exists, there's porn on the internet of it? But
Oh
in
God,
general,
unfortunately, that's true.
male-female porn, there is no emotional connection. In fact, it's usually pretty awful for that reason. There are subgenres of male-male porn where the emotional connection is very tangible, it's very loving. You have people expressing affection for each other. It's very tangible. That's part of the fantasy. Where male-female porn is generally written only for the male gaze, for jerking off. It has nothing to do with what would feel good for the woman, and therefore it is transactional, and it is there's just not any kind of an emotional connection, because that's not what the primary consumer of that porn wants. So I'm going to point out that you can't just say that porn doesn't have an emotional connection, because some male porn does, and it's a wonderful thing. Wasn't expecting
it's target marketing.
Saturday morning, but hey,
Okay.
you know, there we are.
JR, you there?
Yes, I was.
I just thought we were all uncomfortable for a minute. I didn't know what was going on.
One uncomfortable or comfortable, just make fun of JR. It works.
I'm comfortable with that.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things where, as the Supreme Court of the U.S. once said, "I can't define it, but I'll know it when I see it." Kind of the principle. Because the line, it seems, between what would be just steamy romance and what would be smut is kind of blurring more, it seems, lately. Has that been your experience, Tyra or Erica, since you have not answered this one? I'm going to put you on the spot, or do you want to pass and we can move on?
No, I think it's.
Uh-oh, we lost her.
Uh-oh.
She's muted.
What did you do, JR?
She censored herself, okay? I did not do that.
There we go.
Says the man behind the curtain.
Tried to unmute her. You muted yourself, my dear.
I know, because my mic just went haywire. It's the exciting things. Can you hear me now? I feel like I'm told. I think it's the eye of beholder, because even if you look at like art, some people would say some of it's pornographic, while other people would look at that piece of art and say that's a beautiful reflection of two people coming together. So I'm all about the eye of beholder. And smut is not bad. Let's just say
no.
I agree with you. I love smut. I mean, oh God, I've opened a can.
When I first started, I was told that 3 or more, sexual scenes is considered then erotica. Clean and sweet is like a peck on the cheek, a peck on the lips, a handhold. Like, you don't go beyond that for clean and sweet. But now it's becoming like, oh, that's, not clean and sweet anymore. That's just, a light whatever. The lines are becoming way more blurred, which is hard because, like my daughter Tegan, she wants to read romance. I'm like, okay. So when she wants when she gets older, it's like I have to read it first so I know what I can expect, so I can explain it then to her of what it is. That way she knows and doesn't get confused. But people market the book as steam, and it's not really steam. It's like full on naked bodies, which I won't complain about, but
Yeah, that's YA's
has to
had
be
that problem
disclosed.
too with the they're calling it new adult, which I think
Yeah.
I think
That
is
used to
really
be
kind of
teen
like a
romance. Is that what they're
misnomer in
calling it
and of
now?
itself. I'm like, can we just call it adult? But
So-
It's supposed to be that 18 to 20 kind of college, that college
Oh,
transitional
the
time.
young adult.
No,
Why
new
they
adult.
used to
no,
be
no,
just-
no, young adult's even
What?
younger.
Yeah, young adult.
Young
is
adult
younger.
is like
Yeah.
transitional.
No, 18 forward. That's adult. That's young adult. Why? So young
I-
adult now is what, like 15?
Well, young adult has always been like preteen teenagers, kind of in that range. Whereas when you talk about new adults, it's 18, like that college age there. And trust me, there's a transition between young adult and over 25. Let's just say that.
Oh, yeah, there's a huge difference. Yeah.
So that's why they call it new adult, because they're oftentimes with that happily ever after, it's not marriage. It's just being happy with yourself. Sometimes you'll get a lot of that kind of romance in there.
Okay.
So, do you think that as writers that you feel a responsibility to try and show not necessarily healthy, because sometimes people aren't starting romance in the healthiest place, but the ability to even get healthy, to like role model what through your characters, healthy development or healthy ending, whether it's going from a not great place to a better place, or even just how love should look better. Does that make sense? Like for me, my mom's idea of bringing up some of these topics was to hand me a book with them in them. Like my mom handled the concept of homosexuality by handing me The Last Herald and going, is there anything you'd like to talk about out of it? So
Great book series.
I mean, it's a wonderful book series, and it was a wonderful way that worked for me. But I mean, my mom did read everything I read before I read it till I was probably in my 20s, because the woman's a really fast reader and we read the same stuff. But definitely she made that effort while I was in my teens so that she could talk about it and make sure that it was modeling behaviors she was okay with.
There are different authors write different things. Personally, I have to live with these people in my head 4 months and years at a time. And so I personally want to write things that don't trigger me and that don't make me uncomfortable and that I feel are healthy. Now, it may take them a while to get to that point of being healthy, but that's where I want to see them go to something functional. There are certainly plenty of subgenres that deal with other things and not yucking anybody's yum. But that's, for me, I have to live with these people in my head. And so that frames where, what I'm willing to put them through and where I want them to end up.
I have a YA fantasy romance that's the parents are actually together, both still alive and like each other.
Wait,
Because
are you sure it's YA?
Yeah, no, it's YA. She's 16, but they're supposed to be dead or hate each other or something. But that I wanted to write something that there was a healthy parent and there was a healthy parental love between the father and mother, because
It's
I
sad that that's
came
a
from
rare
that,
thing.
and you can't see that. You don't see that. They're always dead. They're Harry Potter, the poor boy.
Batman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine,
Batman.
I pull from experience of being, well, verbally, emotionally, mentally abused a lot. So like my characters are the extreme of one kind. And so my female character, my male character, like they have to overcome that and know that just because that happened in the past doesn't make them them. They can put it behind them, they can move on, and that they can heal from that trauma. And the other person, whoever they're falling in love with, understands that, like, okay, I understand your conflict, I understand where you're coming from, I'm going to offer you compassion and let's get through this together. Like my mom was very mentally abusive. She left me places just to see if I could get back. So I tend to do the kind of same things to my characters. Like my first character I ever made, Jordy, she was left stranded alone with a kid. My brother left me stranded alone with his kid, and I had to adapt. I had to figure it out. Wow. As a, senior in high school. So like for her, I had to figure out character that would best fit to her would be someone that wouldn't leave, that, you know, she could be vulnerable to, break down to, and understand that, you know, come the end of the day, he loves her for her, and that's not going to go away. So like, that's what I do.
Well, I think that's healthy, especially so people can relate to it that are possibly going through something similar, and they read your books and they're like, okay, I can overcome this.
Yeah.
And great therapy too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yes. I can't write the whole, you know, good parents thing because I don't have that experience to write it. So I don't want to do that and like hurt some poor person. Like, why would you say that if the person's like, you know, so good? It's like, I can't. I have no relatability to that.
Yeah, I watched
So you're
the
not writing
So I don't
Hallmark.
want to.
and there was a
I can't
great.
do Hallmark.
Yeah, I watched a
I
comedy
could
and there was a
Hallmark.
great line in it where somebody's mom like sent cookies, and they went, "Is this what a happy, well-adjusted childhood tastes like?" And they went, "Yes."
Just like chocolate chip, that's what exactly it tastes like.
Just was like, I get that. I get that. That's funny. Oh wait, I just accidentally changed something.
So we know it was
What?
Doc that was
Wow.
muting
She hit a
Tyra.
button.
If you're watching this on
No.
YouTube, you're getting an
No,
interesting.
JR, you
There we
muted
go.
her. You hit the wrong
Yeah,
button.
my computer wanted to do an update in the middle of this.
Of course it did.
We're
So
covering for JR. We know it was him.
romance, like on the romance shelf versus, you know, like Alona Andrews or many of your novels. Is there a certain percentage of plot time that has to be spent on a romance for it to be romance and not sci-fi with romance?
Oh.
And if you're listening, not watching, she's doing finger quotes around romance. And
Mine
true love.
50.
Okay.
And it's all kinds of, and that's all kinds of expressions of romance, not just the sexy times. So that can be going out for a romantic dinner. That can be, you know, doing love language kind of things for each other. That's focusing on the affection between the two people. And the rest of the time, they're hunting monsters or fighting witches or dealing with, you know, supernatural threats to humanity, as one does.
Yeah, it's going to have its own 50 plot. It's going to have at least 50% of that plot has got to be that. And then you have a second plot that's whatever story is going on underneath that.
So
I
you
think
say as a
Nick-
general rule, it's a 50-50 mix.
And, well, that's kind of like the stopping point of where you probably switch into, instead of saying romantic suspense, you say suspense with romantic elements.
Okay.
So when you talk about hunting monsters as a love language, you got Nick all excited. But
The couple that hunts together stays together, JR. That's what I've been trying to tell you.
so do
Please
you
accept
guys?
Ed as a token of my admiration.
I'm sorry.
I will say this, my sister and her husband do hunt together and they do have a great relationship. So maybe Nick's right.
I think you have to. I think it works.
Could be antique hunting, monster hunting, just hunt something.
My husband and I
understand.
go dirt biking and hunting too. We have a great relationship.
There you go.
Everything. My family kills things on video games and tabletop games. So
Okay, same way.
So what you're saying is killing things is how you love.
the
Okay.
family that
Yeah.
plays together stays together.
Stays together.
I got a shirt that says that the family that slays together stays together.
So
I had a bunch of D&D
obviously
guys
go
on it.
on for a while, but I know everybody here has plans to do and things to mischief to make. So we're going to go around and can you guys
hold
give
on.
us
Hold on. Before we do that, so as you, dear listener, we are not opposed because we have looked actively to try to get some sci-fi romance authors and other spec fic genres of romance just to broaden our type of guests and the type of interviews we do. So if there's anything in that field that you want, let us know in the comments when we post this. If there are questions for a panel on romance we didn't ask, throw those in the comments too. If you want us to have these guests back to do more, you know, we're willing to do all the things. You just got to communicate with us. And when we give all the contact information, if you use our email, Cisca will say nice things with you and pretend she has feelings. And I ruin everything. And that's blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. All right, Doc.
you have to put it up there or else he gets fake email addresses.
Just for the hate mail.
Just
We
for the
also
hate
do
mail.
Nick at blastersandbladespodcast.com for hate mail as well. But he
Yeah,
likes
and
it. It's his romance language.
I will respond.
It's his
If you
romance
can
language.
read it.
Yeah, I'd love to be just
So I was going to ask, can you tell our listeners what you have coming up, or if you have a new release, and where we can find you on social media? We'll also put this information in the show notes for anybody who doesn't have pen and paper on them to track down these lovely ladies. Let's go with Erica, and then we'll go with Tyra and Gail.
You can find me on Amazon. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. As for upcoming books, I'm releasing my third book in the series, Dangerous Ties. It's a paranormal romance. It does get hot in there, so don't get pissed because you're warned in the blurb and then you're warned in the book before you even open it. And I have a sci-fi alien reverse harem that's coming out in September as well, with the same types of warnings saying, if you're easily triggered, if you have, anything against, sexy time smut and scenes, you're warned in the blurb, you're warned in the book, so don't get pissed.
And yet you will still see people in the comments who complain.
Oh
I
yeah.
will admit,
Like the I wrote a fantasy romance series, non-historical at all, and I get comments, you are historically inaccurate. It's not historical, but okay.
you should just go good. Carry on.
I do. They say when you get your first 1-star review, you made it as an author. So I was like, cool.
Nailed it.
First time.
And it's always just one. It's like everyone else is giving you like 4 or 5 stars, and that one is like, it was historically inaccurate. It's like, go have a coffee, Karen. Jesus.
All right, so you've mentioned where you can find you, but what do you have coming out?
I have the sci-fi coming out in September, and the finale to my paranormal romance coming out in March.
All right, those are all the things. The show notes will have all of her links. And what about you, Gail? What do you have coming up, and where can listeners and readers find you?
I'm pretty easy to find as Gail Z Martin. Make sure you have the Z in there.com, and Morgan Bryce, BRICE.com. All the social media is a variation of those names, but I'm on Twitter and Instagram and Pinterest and just about everywhere. The new book for Morgan Bryce, The Romance, is The Devil You Know. Just came out this week that we're recording, and that is the 6th book in my Witchbane series, but it can be read as a standalone.
And Tyra.
Awesome. I'm Tyra Burton in all the places, mostly Instagram, Facebook, and occasionally I drop in at Twitter at Tyra Ann Burton, because Tyra Burton is out there and she is single and ready to mingle, and that's the only thing she's ever posted. So slip my middle name in there. But I hopefully have a book called Socially Evergreen coming out this summer on social media for small businesses, authors, entertainers, and then hopefully a fantasy this fall.
Ooh.
All right, that sounds outstanding. And so this is the part, dear listener, where I remind you that your thoughts matter. So please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books. And please read the blurbs before you complain. If you're reading fantasy romance, it's not historically accurate. Unless you're complaining that she wasn't historically accurate to the universe she created, and then we don't call it accuracy, we call that continuity issues.
Just because we're talking about books that are coming out and are new, the Dragon Award nominations are open, and all of these new books are eligible for a nomination.
Do people actually vote this early, or do they tend to wait till closer to?
No, they nominate this early.
But I mean, do they are? I understand that it's a nomination, not voting, and then technically by Dragon,
some people do nominate this early.
I wait
in
till
what, June, July?
Is
that usually when voting is?
Voting is in August.
Oh, I wait until the last minute so I have a chance to read what's out there. Like, I might miss a good book if I vote too early, or nominate too early. There you go, Doc. So, all right. Now that she's done harassing me, and we'll probably continue when the show is over, let's talk about how you can. Yeah, that's what she does. It's how she shows her love. She's mean to you. How you can find us. So you can find us on Twitter at twitter.com/SF_fantasy_show. Sierra Foxtrot _fantasy_show. You can email the show at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. That's for real, people. Email us at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. You can find our Facebook group where all the shenanigans happen, and you can comment about today's episode and tell us everything we got wrong or Doc got wrong, whatever, which is facebook.com/groups/Blasters and Blades podcast. You can go to our website at anchor.fm /blasters-and-blades. Again, Anchor.fm. I see that, Doc. Anchor.fm/blasters, tack and tack blades, where you can also support us on a Patreon style model for as little as 99 cents a month and help keep the lights on. Or alternately, you can support us over at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts Nick Garber and Doc Cisca duly intoxicated. They will drink until their liver surrenders.
Never surrender.
Oh, you got to say that with more feeling, more passion, more. You can do better. Nick, help her out.
Bring on the long schlong.
All right, and on that note, Doc, bring us home.
Thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For the actually here, Nick and JR, I'm Cisca. This was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time where we indulge your love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, all things that go boom, and of course, making fun of JR, because that is the national pastime here.
Oh, we forgot something really, really important. Gail and Tyra, we didn't ask them how they feel about pineapple on pizza. We need to know if they're allowed back. So Tyra,
They're allowed back.
I have bad news. So I have a caveat. My husband is allergic to tomatoes. So
Okay.
pineapple on pizza is a wonderful thing because you can get other sauces with it, like buffalo sauce, which is awesome.
Okay.
So yes, I'm sorry we are a pineapple on pizza household.
That's fine.
Doc approves, but
I like pineapple on pizza.
See?
Same.
I told you.
Erica, you were supposed to be on my team. We're best friends now. What are you trying to break up with me or something? You're supposed to say no.
Kinda.
We
JR,
talked about this
while
beforehand.
consent always matters, your consent on pizza toppings does not.